The courtroom was full, but no one was ready for what was about to happen. A poor girl walked in, wearing torn clothes, holding a file like it was her last hope. Tense silence. And then, people started laughing. "Yes, laugh at her," one man whispered. "She doesn't even belong here." But what they didn't know, this poor girl was about to say something that would silence the entire courtroom. She stood there, shaking, alone, with no lawyer, no money, no support. The rich lawyer smiled confidently, ready to destroy her case in seconds. And for a moment, it looked like she was going to lose everything. Her voice cracked, her papers fell, people laughed even louder. But then, the judge asked her one question, just one, and her answer changed everything. The laughter stopped, heads slowly lowered, and the same people who mocked her couldn't even look her in the eyes anymore. What did she say? How did one answer destroy their arrogance and bring justice to the courtroom? Stay till the end, because this story will change the way you see people forever. Welcome to Heroic Stories Hub, where ordinary people prove that true strength doesn't come from money, it comes from courage. Here, every story will touch your heart, challenge your thinking, and remind you that even the weakest voice can shake the world. So sit back and experience a story you will never forget. The courtroom burst into cruel laughter the moment she stepped in. The heavy wooden doors creaked open and every head turned at once. For a second, there was silence, and then it came, sharp, loud, and merciless. Laughter. A thin girl stood frozen at the entrance, as if the ground beneath her feet had suddenly disappeared. Her clothes were old and slightly oversized, the fabric faded from years of use. Her sandals were worn out, barely holding together. Strands of her hair fell loosely across her face, and her hands clutched a worn file so tightly it looked like it might tear. "Is this a joke?" someone whispered loudly. "Did she get lost on the way to a shelter?" another voice added. The laughter spread like wildfire, bouncing off the courtroom walls. Amina felt her chest tighten. Her ears rang as the sound surrounded her, making her feel smaller with every passing second. She took a hesitant step forward, then another. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the floor itself didn't want her there. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground, avoiding the stares, the smirks, the judgment. I'm here for the case," she said softly, but her voice was too weak, too fragile to rise above the noise. "Speak up," someone shouted from the back. More laughter followed. Amina's fingers tightened around her file, her knuckles turned white. She swallowed hard, trying to gather strength, but her throat felt dry and tight. At the front of the room, a well-dressed lawyer leaned back in his chair, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his expression full of amusement. He glanced at his colleagues and smirked. "Your Honor," he said, barely holding back a laugh, "is this really the claimant?" The courtroom chuckled again. Amina felt her chest drop. Claimant? That word sounded so big, so important. It didn't feel like it belonged to her. She took a few more steps forward, her legs slightly shaking. Every eye in the room followed her, some curious, most judgmental, a few openly amused. She finally reached the center of the courtroom and stopped. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Her mind went blank. Just breathe, she told herself, but even breathing felt difficult. The judge, seated high above, looked down at her. His expression was calm, unreadable. "What is your name?" he asked. Amina hesitated. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence stretched. "Cat got her tongue?" someone whispered. More snickers followed. Amina forced herself to speak. "Amina." Her voice shook, but it was there. It was real. The judge nodded slightly. "Step forward, Amina." She obeyed, moving closer, her footsteps echoing softly in the quiet that had briefly replaced the laughter. But the tension remained. The lawyer stood up slowly, adjusting his coat with confidence. He walked a few steps forward, circling slightly as if observing her. "Do you even understand why you're here?" he asked, tilting his head. Amina nodded quickly. "Yes." "Oh," he raised an eyebrow. "Then please, enlighten us." A few people in the room chuckled again. Amina's grip on the file tightened even more. Her hands were slightly sweaty now. "My father," she began, her voice barely steady. "He worked for your company." The lawyer's face faded just a little, but his eyes still carried amusement. "And?" he pressed. Amina swallowed. "He died there." A faint murmur spread across the courtroom. Not laughter this time, but curiosity. Still, it didn't last long. "Oh, here we go," someone muttered. "Another compensation case," another voice said. The lawyer sighed dramatically. "Your Honor, with all due respect, we see these cases all the time. Unfortunate incidents turned into opportunities." A few people nodded in agreement. Amina's eyes widened slightly. "No," she said quickly, but her voice was too soft again, too easy to ignore. The lawyer chuckled. "Then what is it like?" Amina felt something break inside her. Her fear was still there, but now it mixed with pain, real, deep pain. "It's not just money," she said, her voice shaking, but slightly louder now. The room quieted just a little. The lawyer raised his eyebrow again. "Then what do you want?" Amina opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because how do you explain loss? How do you explain nights without food? How do you watch your father struggle and then disappear forever? Her lips trembled. She tried again, but the words got stuck. The silence returned. And then, laughter. Again. Maybe she forgot her speech. Amina's vision blurred slightly as tears filled her eyes. She quickly looked down, ashamed. Her shoulders dropped. For a moment, it felt like she might run away, like she didn't belong here, like everyone else was right. But then, a memory flashed in her mind. Her father's tired face, his weak smile, his voice telling her, "Always stand for what is right, even if you stand alone." Amina took a deep breath. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She lifted her head, just slightly, not fully confident, but no longer completely broken. The judge noticed. He leaned forward just a little. "Let her speak," he said firmly. The room fell silent again. This time, not because of laughter, but because something had changed. Amina was still scared, still trembling, still standing in front of people who didn't believe in her, but she hadn't left, and that meant something. She tightened her grip on the file one last time and prepared to speak again. Amina stood still for a moment, her chest rising and falling as she tried to steady her breathing. The silence in the courtroom felt heavy now, pressing down on her from all sides. She looked at the judge, then at the floor, then finally gathered enough courage to speak. "My father, he worked as a cleaner in your factory," she began slowly. Her voice was still shaking, but this time it didn't disappear. The lawyer crossed his arms, his expression already bored. A cleaner, he repeated, almost amused. So not an engineer, not a supervisor, just a cleaner. A few quiet chuckles spread across the room. Amina felt the sting of those words, but she didn't stop. Yes, she said, a little more firmly this time. He cleaned the machines every day for 10 years. The lawyer tilted his head. And? Amina opened her file with trembling hands. Papers inside were old, slightly crumpled, some corners folded from being carried so often. He used to tell me the machines were not safe, she said. He said they made strange sounds and sometimes stopped suddenly. Objection! The lawyer snapped loudly. This is hearsay. Personal stories are not evidence. The sudden loud voice made Amina flinch. Her hands shook harder, and a few papers slipped from her grip, falling to the floor. The sound of paper hitting the ground echoed in the silent room, and then laughter. She can't even hold her documents, laughing mockingly. This is embarrassing, sarcastic tone. Amina quickly knelt down, her fingers rushing to gather the scattered pages. I'm sorry, she whispered under her breath. Her vision blurred again, but she blinked rapidly, forcing herself not to break. As she stood back up, her hands were still shaking, but she held the papers tighter this time. These are his letters, she said, lifting a few sheets. He wrote complaints many times. The lawyer gave a small laugh, shaking his head. Letters, he said. Anyone can write letters, cold tone. That doesn't prove anything. Amina's heart sank for a moment, but she quickly continued. He wrote them because no one listened, she said, her voice cracking slightly. He was scared, but he kept working. Because he needed money, the lawyer interrupted sharply. Amina looked at him, her eyes filled with pain. Yes, she said quietly, soft, sad. We needed money. The room grew quieter, not silent, but less cruel. Amina took a deep breath. One day, there was an explosion, she said, her voice trembling again. A machine broke, and she paused, struggling to say the words. Her lips quivered. It killed him. A deep silence fell across the courtroom. This time, no laughter, only stillness. A few people shifted in their seats, but the lawyer quickly broke the moment. Tragic, he said, flatly, but accidents happen. Amina's eyes widened. It wasn't an accident, she said suddenly, louder than before. The room reacted immediately, some surprised, some annoyed. The lawyer narrowed his eyes. And how would you know that? Amina froze. Her confidence cracked. She hesitated. Do you have any proof? He pressed, stepping closer. Amina looked down at her file. No videos, no recordings, no powerful evidence, just letters and memories. I don't have videos or recordings, she admitted softly. The lawyer smirked, stepping back with satisfaction. Exactly, he said. No proof, just stories. The courtroom murmured again. Waste of time, someone whispered. Amina's shoulders dropped slightly. For a moment, it felt like everything she had tried to hold together was falling apart. All the courage she had built, all the strength she had gathered, it was slipping. Her fingers loosened around the papers. Her breathing became uneven again. Maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't be here. The thought crept into her mind, heavy and painful. But then she remembered the nights she stayed hungry, the mornings she woke up early to work, the empty space in her home where her father used to sit, and something inside her refused to give up. She slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were still filled with tears, but there was something else now, strength. I don't have dig proof, she said, her voice still soft but steady. I don't have money or a lawyer. The courtroom listened. not laughing, not interrupting, just listening. "But I have the truth," she continued. The words were simple, but they carried weight, real weight. The lawyer rolled his eyes again, though less confidently this time. Uneasy dismissal. "Truth is not enough in court," he replied. Amina looked at him. This time she didn't look down. "My father knew he could die," she said, emotional but firm. "But he still worked because we needed to survive." Her voice cracked again, but she didn't stop. "And they knew the machines were dangerous," she added, accusing tone. A ripple of tension moved through the room. The lawyer's expression tightened slightly. "That is a serious accusation," he said, controlled anger. Amina nodded slowly. "I know." Silence followed. A long, heavy silence. Even the people who had laughed before were now quiet. Some looked thoughtful, some uncomfortable, some unsure. Amina stood there, alone, but not as small as before. She was still scared, still shaking, still just a poor girl in a courtroom full of powerful people. But now she had said what she came to say, and that mattered. The lawyer turned away slightly, adjusting his coat again, slight nervousness. "Your Honor," he said, trying to regain control, "this case lacks evidence and should not proceed further." A few people nodded. It seemed like the end. Amina felt her chest tighten again. Was this it? Was everything over? She looked at the judge, her eyes silently asking, hoping, pleading, and then the judge leaned forward. The judge leaned forward, his fingers gently resting on the desk as his eyes fixed on Amina. The entire courtroom held its breath. "Amina," he said slowly, "I have one question for you." His voice was calm, but it carried weight, the kind of weight that could change everything. Amina's heart began to race. She nodded slightly, her hands tightening around the file again. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge studied her for a moment, as if trying to understand something deeper than her words. Then he asked, "Why didn't you hire a lawyer?" The question hung in the air, simple, direct, and yet powerful. Amina froze. Her mind went blank for a second. The courtroom shifted slightly, people leaning forward, waiting. The lawyer smirked faintly, confident that the answer would only weaken her further. Amina opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her throat felt tight, her chest heavy. But then she spoke. "Because," she started, her voice barely audible, "I couldn't afford one." The words were quiet, but they landed heavily. A small ripple moved through the courtroom. Not laughter, something else, something softer. The judge didn't interrupt. He simply watched her. Amina swallowed hard and continued. "My father's treatment, it took everything we had," she said. "We sold things, borrowed money, but it wasn't enough." Her voice began to crack. "After he died," she paused, tears forming in her eyes, "there was nothing left." The courtroom grew still, completely still. "I had to leave school," she continued, sad acceptance. "I started working, small jobs, anything I could find." Her hands trembled as she held the file closer to her chest. "I thought about hiring a lawyer," she admitted, "but every time I asked, they asked for money I didn't have." A deep silence spread. Even the lawyer's expression shifted slightly. "So I came alone," she said, quiet strength. The words echoed. Alone. A single word carrying a lifetime of struggle. Amina wiped her tears quickly, trying to regain control. "I know I don't speak well," she added. "I know I don't understand everything here." Her voice softened. "But I understand what happened to my father." The judge's eyes didn't leave her. "And tell me," he said gently, "if you lose this case, what happens?" Amina looked down for a moment, this time not out of fear, but to gather her thoughts. Then she looked up again, her face still wet with tears, but her expression stronger. "Nothing changes," she said quietly. "I go back to work. I keep living the same life." She took a small breath. "I stay poor." The words were simple, but brutally honest. No drama, no exaggeration, just truth. "But if I win," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "maybe something will change." The courtroom leaned into her words. "Maybe they will fix those machines," she said. "Maybe workers won't be scared every day." Her voice steadied even more. "Maybe no daughter will ever have to stand where I'm standing today." The impact was immediate. A wave of silence filled the room, heavy, unavoidable. The same people who laughed earlier now looked down, unable to meet her eyes. A man in the back shifted uncomfortably. A woman slowly wiped her eyes. The lawyer cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the moment. "Your Honor," he started. But the judge raised his hand. Silence. Complete silence. The judge leaned back slightly, his face thoughtful, his eyes still focused on Amina. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Then he spoke. "This court," he began, his voice firm and steady, "will not ignore a voice that comes from poverty." A soft gasp spread across the room. The lawyer's expression froze. Amina's eyes widened. "I have heard enough to understand that this case deserves proper examination," the judge continued. He turned slightly towards the clerk. "Assign a legal team to represent Amina immediately." The courtroom reacted instantly. "What?" someone whispered. "This is unexpected," another murmured. The lawyer stepped forward quickly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." The judge cut him off. "What is irregular," he said sharply, "is dismissing a life as insignificant." Silence again, stronger this time. The judge looked directly at Amina. "You will not stand alone anymore," he said. Amina felt something inside her break, not from pain this time, but from relief. Her lips trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't try to hide them. For the first time, they didn't feel like weakness. The judge nodded slightly. "This court also orders a full investigation into the factory's safety conditions," he added. The impact was immediate. The lawyer stepped back, his confidence shaken. The murmurs in the room changed, no longer mocking, now serious, respectful. Even those who laughed before sat quietly, reflecting on what they had witnessed. Amina stood there, still in her worn clothes, still holding her old file, but everything had changed. The way people looked at her, the way the room felt, the way she felt inside. She was no longer invisible, no longer weak, no longer just a poor girl. She was someone who stood up, someone who spoke, someone who refused to stay silent. As the judge prepared to move forward with the case, Amina took a small step back, not out of fear, but because she finally felt steady, strong, whole. The same courtroom that once laughed at her now held its silence in respect. And in that silence, a powerful truth echoed. Never judge someone by their appearance, because strength doesn't wear expensive clothes. Courage doesn't need a perfect voice. And sometimes, the person everyone underestimates is the one who changes everything.